Everybody, welcome back to Matt's Garage DIY. Today we are going to do a little bit of work on a Mauser M38. This right here. Stand back a little so you can see the whole thing. Very similar to a M96, just a little bit shorter of a barrel. And although I have the bolt out, the bolt handle is turned down on the 38. Nice gun. This is a Husqvarna made in 1941. The issue today is the sight. Has the flat sight or the open sights. I've reached the age where I now need reading glasses, so those sights are pretty much impossible for me to use with any kind of accuracy. So we're going to see what we can do to make a Peep sight. Didn't want to wreck the sort of original slide, so I got a second one, actually from an M96 that it's a little bit different, but close enough. We're going to make a few modifications to it, and I'll show you how to do that, and we'll make ourselves a Peep sight. All right, so first thing we're going to need to do is remove the old sight. So you can see I've already kind of started to push the pin out a little bit. There's basically just a pin, kind of a hinge for the sight. Just show you. Basically pivots around that point. You just need to drift that pin out from the side to remove the sight. Doesn't need very much force. I'm just using a I think it's a 3/32 punch, but any kind of sort of small punch. I've actually even used drill bits in the past for this sort of things. Just make sure you wear safety glasses. The drill bits are brittle and can obviously break. All right, so first things first, just going to tap this little pin out the side. So pretty easy, or not. There's a little bit of spring pressure on that, and there's the sight removed. So when I put these two sights side by side, one on the right is the original sight from the M38. Sight on the left is the sight from the M96 that I'm going to try to use. First thing, obviously, you notice is up at the top, a little narrower. The 96 is a little narrower than the 38, so we're going to need to figure out what that distance is and then probably make a couple little washers just so that sight fits in nice and tight and remains centered. Second thing you'll notice is at the back on the 38, it's got some grooves cut out. This is so that it sort of fits in between some centering blocks. This one doesn't have that. I'm just going to use a file and basically file in those grooves on the side. I was just going to do a little test fit here and then discovered that there's some other issues with the sight. I'm going to actually have to sort of file off this same little kind of side rail that the elevation adjuster slides on. I have to do a little bit of filing with that as well just to make that fit. Try to get a top down here as you can sort of see. Get that back in focus. All right, so yeah, right here. So I'm basically from the end to roughly where the dash mark is for the 3. I'll have to just sort of file that off both sides, and then should drop in there, and that might actually even solve my centering problem. Got my sight clamped in the vise. Got two different files here. Not sure you're gonna be able to see the different texture in those, but I've got a coarser file and then a finer or smoother file. So I'm gonna do sort of the initial cutting with the coarse file and then kind of touch it up with the clean file. So slow and steady. You don't want to take off too much. Always take a little bit more off, but take off too much, then you're kind of stuck with that. So just going to kind of work away at this. All right, so get this to focus here. All right, so as you can see, I have now sort of ground off part of that ridge. I haven't gone completely flush yet. I'm going to leave just a tiny little bit of extra material just till I see how nicely that fits. Going to repeat the same on the other side, and when it's time to fit it, I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so here we go. I've got the sight. I've kind of ground it down a little bit. Just going to put the caliper on here and come up with about 14.34 millimeters. I apologize for everybody that uses inches. For everybody that uses inches, here, try to give you that reading as well. There's about 0.564 inches. Take a quick measurement inside the two blocks, and it's coming up to about 13.27. Took a few different measurements. I kind of averaging it out. I'm going to say about 13.3 is probably, there we go, so 13.34 at that point. So I'm going to probably go somewhere around 13.3 to try to make that fit. All right, so I kind of went back and forth a few times, just taking a little bit more off. So I'm down to 13.27, 13.28. So with the original measurement, yeah, see, it kind of varies a little bit there, but just going to be just a tick under what I need, so this should work out perfect. All right, just including this, just kind of show what I'm trying to accomplish here. So this sight on the right, this is my original M38 sight, and as you can see, it's notched out and then widens up at the top, whereas you look at the M96 sight, it is not. It's really hard to kind of show you that with any kind of clarity. Actually, there you can kind of see. So basically, just from this little groove, right, kind of at the midpoint down to the bottom, I'll be filing that out just so that it ends up looking more like this. Yeah. Yes, that's what I'm going to be trying to accomplish with the next little bit of filing. And you can see I've got that back notched out. We come over here, sort of drop that in place, and that should work out pretty well. Drift that pin in, and just going to check, make sure everything fits nicely, but looks like we're well on our way to making that sight work. All right, so I got the pin in place. Sight hinges quite nicely. Elevation slide seems to work. So next will be making a peep sight. I'm going to start off by making a piece, basically just going to fit across here. I need it to be narrow enough that it doesn't interfere with these two kind of pieces of the slide that are going to be used to adjust the elevation. So basically just this inside width here, it's about 13.4 millimeters, roughly a ½ inch as well. So I'm going to start by just using a piece of angle iron. I'm going to cut off a little chunk, do some filing, do some cutting, fitting, and we will see what we come up with. All right, so cut the two grooves. That's the 6.9 millimeters. That's basically the most important dimension. That's going to fit in between the grooves on the slide rail. Just stepping over here. So that's 6.9. That is going to fit exactly in here. Or that's the idea, is that it fits exactly in there. You know, everything else has a little bit more tolerance, but that's probably the most critical measurement at this point in time. So now that I've got the centerpiece fitting, just working on kind of reducing this this width here. I'm going to go for roughly 3 millimeters on each side. So as you can see, when I measure that out, coming out at 4.43, so another millimeter, millimeter and a half that I want to take off that, and then I'll repeat that same measurement on the other side. All right, so I want to keep my center of aim in my front sight if possible. So I'm going to try to have the center of my aperture kind of, you know, sort of work out exactly where this original kind of notch is. And so I want the center of my aperture to basically be sort of flush with the top of this right here. So if we look on the back side, try to get that in focus, I'm going to just grind out the sort of this recessed area to make kind of clearance for the bottom of that notch. So I've just center punched a hole. I'm going to start with quite a small drill bit, and we'll start working up from there and taking looks through the sight. I think my ultimate goal is going to be between 4 to 5 millimeters. I think that's roughly 3/16 to 1/4 inch as a final aperture size. So while taking a look at the clips that I had, I realized it wasn't super clear where exactly I center punched the hole for the center of the peep sight. So I just drew up a couple little diagrams to hopefully explain this a little better. Basically, I wanted to kind of maintain the front sight height, and I wanted to keep the elevation slide on the original sight working and accurate. So I wanted the center of my peep sight to still match this height for the height of the original iron sights. So what I did, took my blank piece, the little piece of angle that I had, set it into place, and then I scribed a line right across the top of the iron sight. That basically gave me the correct height so that I could reuse the original the original front sight, as well as the elevations. So then with my piece off, you can see here's the scribed line. I then divided the width in half, center punched it, and that is where I drilled my hole. So then, prior to putting the sight back on, went back to my original rear sight, made sure to grind out a large area, much larger than where my the hole for my peep sight is going to be. I didn't want any kind of interference or reflection or anything coming off of that. So ground that out, basically with the hole drilled and the piece, the new sight set in place. That's roughly what the new peep sight is going to look like. So hopefully that clarifies kind of where I punched the hole and a little bit of what I did as far as grinding out that rear sight. All right, so here we go. I've gone up to 11/64, that's 4.25 millimeters. And pretty happy right now with the sight picture. Believe it's going to be low enough. So I'm going to just basically spend a bit of time tidying this piece up, file it, etc. Make it look like not just a big chunk of angle iron stuck in my gun. And I'll show you what that looks like afterwards. But basically just going to go back and forth with the bench grinder and some files and clean this up. All right, so here's the peep sight. Not quite finished, but pretty happy with the way things are turning out so far. Nice sight picture. I think I've mentioned this before, but I got 4.5 or 11/64, 4.5 millimeter or 11/64 inches hole for the peep sight. Gonna take both of these pieces off, blue them, and then I'm probably just gonna attach that with epoxy for now while I do a couple test shots, just to make sure that it's low enough and accurate enough. And then probably just tack weld it in place once I'm satisfied with the way it works. But this is what we've got so far. Alright, so here's both the pieces that I'm going to do the bluing on. Basically this is the product I'm using. It's the Birchwood Casey bluing kit. They sell a bunch of other products, True Oil, etc. for refinishing gun stocks. This video I'm not actually going to get into the whole process of bluing, but I have used this product several times and really happy with the results. Super simple, don't need to heat anything up, just got to make sure everything's nice and clean. So, gonna do that with both of these and then I will show you what the finished products look like. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, just was using this Birchwood Casey Perma Blue. Gave both of these pieces a couple treatments with that. It's done a nice kind of black finish to it. So when I put the pieces back on the gun, just gonna drop that in, there we go. And then this in, it's gonna look good. You know, not quite original, but not gonna look like I've done a terrible job to this gun. And again, as I mentioned before, this slide is not the original slide, wanting to protect sort of the original pieces that go along with this gun. But now I need to attach the peep sight to the slide. As a temporary measure, I'm actually going to use a 2-part epoxy. Just mix equal parts of this. I think ultimately, after I've done a few test fires and I'm happy with the way it all works, then I may actually tack weld the peep sight back in place. But I've used this epoxy for a variety of things. Quite happy with the results, and I'm pretty confident that it will work for what I need right now. So just going to end up mixing up a little bit of that, putting it on the back, and yeah, we'll kind of go from there. All right, so mixing up some equal parts of this. I saved my old pop rivet stubs, and I'll use those for little mixing sticks. You can also use a toothpick or kind of anything else you have around. Just make sure it's clean, and you can mix that up. All right, so I've mixed up the epoxy. When the two parts are mixed, it should be kind of a milky, translucent color. If you still have clear areas in it, then it's probably not quite mixed enough. But just doing little bits here, so it's pretty easy to get a good mixture. And then on the peep sight, just going to put some on the back here. Fill those 2 grooves. And got a little bit more of this here. All right, so just giving it a good coat on the back. Want to make sure that all those grooves are nicely filled in. There we go, got that. Drop it in, and press it down there. Bob's your uncle. And that is Kind of a homemade Mauser Peep sight. Okay, so here we are. This is the final product of the Peep sight. Just put, like I said, I put that on with epoxy. Kind of see a little bit of that in the back if I get the light right. The elevation slide works well. Looking through, let's see if I can hold this up against something light. Yeah, I get a nice sight picture through there. Oops. And yeah, that should about do it. All right, here's just a quick look. Sight is now installed. And taking a look through that Peep sight, you can see the peg nicely down at the end. Anyways, thanks again for tuning in, and hope you enjoyed this video.